So Credit Suisse has banked an unexpected rise in profit, but EU banks, well, for them, the verdict is waiting tomorrow when we find what happened with those stress tests. To assess all this, let's talk to Dirk Becker, financial analyst at Kepler Capital Markets in Frankfurt. Thank you very much for joining us today. Let's start with Credit Suisse. So we've had good news for them, I guess, in the sense that they've managed to buck the trend, but their revenue generation has gone down, although not as much perhaps as some of the big American banks.
Yeah, I think the results overall have been slightly disappointing. There were a couple of one-offs which were pushing this, and I was very disappointed to see the revenue in fixed income to fall so much. We were also slightly disappointed about the weak margin in private banking. So I think the quality of the results is not as good as suggested by the earnings beat at first glance.
Now, let's look at the stress tests. Obviously, for Credit Suisse, that capitalisation wouldn't have been a problem. Just how much do you think we're going to really find out from the stress tests when the results are published?
Yeah, well, as far as we can see, all European or most European banks have passed the stress test. So I think the general perception will be that the stress that the regulators have assumed in these tests are probably not very big. And that with higher stress levels we would see more failures. So we really need to see what the perception is, and my suspicion is that this will not really lead to bigger confidence in European banks as long as there's this suspicion that the stress level has not been high enough in this
Indeed.
test.
I mean, the point of stress tests surely is to test for a worst case scenario, and it would appear that these have been engineered is perhaps too strong a word, but set up in a way that not very many banks are going to fail. That clearly is a weakness, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we look back 1 year, what the US did with their stress test, they had a couple of failures. They resolved these failures by immediately recapitalizing those banks, and this really restored confidence in the US banking system. And in Europe, this doesn't seem to be the case, and the simple statement that all banks have passed the stress test is just not credible, as long as it also pertains to very weak players such as the German Landesbanken, which all seem to have passed the test.
Now, we did hear that rumours, anyway, that Hypo Bank had failed the test. What will happen to it if it does indeed fail?
Well, yeah, Hypo Real Estate is under government administration anyway, so nobody will really be too much surprised about this. We all know they had a couple of billions in Greek government debt and in all other southern European debts. This bank is under reconstruction anyway, and it will be recapitalized by the German government, so this doesn't really matter for the market. And I mean, had they not failed the test, I think this would have meant that the stress test would be a real joke overall.
Okay, well, Dirk Becker, thank you very much indeed for your insight this morning.
Thank you.